Thank you, Tim. Thank you very much. Kia ora, everybody. Daja hao, jongu hao. I realise I'm 10 minutes in between you and a nice lunch, so I'll whiz through this quickly, as Tim said. I just want to say also special thanks to ICBC for their sponsorship of our report this year. There's obviously keen competition between the banks for who might sponsor us next year, but I'm looking forward to hearing more about that when we talk to Warren at lunchtime. The New Zealand Business Roundtable is a member-based, non-for-profit organisation based in Shanghai, but with tentacles right across China, membership across China, which seeks to advocate, educate and develop New Zealand businesses fraternally, if you like, across 62 New Zealand companies. All of these companies are based, New Zealand companies, are based in China. The survey that we undertook was done in April and May, specifically with the view of the timing of the Prime Minister's visit, with the hope that the delegation would gain some insights from what we were asking the questions about. So let's have a quick look now about some of the key trends. I've got 7 key trends and then 1 or 2 recommendations. If the green button works. Slide. Right. So, firstly, about the optimism of those New Zealand companies in China. Over 52% of them have got high or very high optimism about doing business in China in the next year. Another 42% have moderate optimism. This is a good picture for what we're looking at going forward. On the right side of that chart, we're looking at now the revenue resilience against economic turbulence. We know about the economic headwinds in China. We know that the real estate market has been tough in the last 2 to 3 years. And we know that the financial markets have also have not prospered as a result of lack of consumer confidence to a certain degree, and also because of the flatness of household incomes. When I go home for dinner every night, I look at my wife's face as a barometer of how the share market's going, and pretty much know that it's been either a good day or a bad day. Mirroring that is the profitability growth. They don't always go hand in hand, but the confidence about profitability growth is still very good. Our respondents were reported profits of positive profits of greater than 10%, 10 to 20%, and greater than 20%. Over 50% of our companies last year reported growing profits, in spite of headwinds in 2024. Surveying the same companies, 56% are confident about profits going into this year, into 2025. Where we took our data from, 62% of the companies that were responding were exporting from New Zealand to China. Pleasingly, there is quite a considerable growth in the number of companies who are producing or sourcing products in China. This points, from our analysis, particularly into the area of localization of packaging and product development, also of the use of local agencies. And we heard earlier today the point about localization. Some of our companies inside Primary Collaboration New Zealand are localising packaging, using local branding, very much focused also on the middle of their supply chains. And there are no better examples of this than NZBRiC, for example. Nathan's here, and also Rocket Apple. The reasons for being in China. You'll see on the left-hand side of that chart, there was quite a considerable drop. This is a ranked survey, so there's quite a considerable drop in the reasons for our companies, our New Zealand companies, being in China from 90% to 70%. But this is relative to the growth in their reasons for being there with regard to the growth of channel partnerships. And again, I'll quote NZBRiC and the comments that Jason made earlier about their systems of ecosystem development of all of their value chain as being integral in making sure that their supply chain partners are all making profits. It's a very good example for all of our New Zealand companies, but how you need to look at all parts of your value chain in terms of looking after your consumer, then your social media, then your supply chain partners through the middle of your packaging and right back to the wharf. The last of these 7 trends is optimism about Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities. Now, I've visited quite a number of these cities in the last short while. A short vignette for you would be a recent visit to Hefei with a couple of our colleagues, where it's one of the fastest growing cities in China. They have one of the biggest BYD manufacturing sites in China and also 3 wonderful medical universities. The point I'm making about this is that a lot of people have moved into second and third tier cities because some of China's biggest businesses have gravitated into the centre of China. These other cities include Xi'an, Chengdu, Qingdao. We visited these places in the last 2-3 months. Jinzhou is a growing city as well. And the difference between the Tier 1 and the Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities is fundamentally economics. And that is that in the Tier 1 cities, it's more expensive to live. It's very difficult to buy an apartment for anything less than 10 million, 15 million RMB in the Tier 1 cities of Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, Beijing. And yet in these cities, in the Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities, it's simply more affordable to live. So our recommendations, therefore, to New Zealand companies. Growing sales and distribution. If you're looking to grow in China, look as well as the Tier 1 cities into Tier 2, Tier 3 and Tier 4 cities. And there are very good examples of how some of the companies who are already based in China and who've got their infrastructure set up in China are now looking carefully outside of Tier 1 cities. The second recommendation is about deepening our understanding of the changing retail environment. This is incredibly dynamic, as most of you would understand, but it's dynamic also online and offline. The demise of Carrefour, for example, and then the rise and the rise and the rise of Sam's Club and Hema are important pictures in the changing retail environment. I'll mention also the changing channel dynamics here, because the middle of supply chain of a number of our companies there has changed quite considerably since COVID. Third recommendation is to implement commercial programs that embrace local nuances. And the best of our companies are localising their branding as well as their messaging and their packaging. And they'll follow seasonal changes. They will change packaging from Liu Iba from 618 to, for example, Dublin 11. So there's very, very fast change in our messaging and our packaging through the seasons of the year. The fourth recommendation is to embrace the strength and relevance of our culturally authentic Maori culture. Now this came through in the survey. It's important to understand, and going back over the years when Dr. Peter Sharples came with delegations of our Maori that faced with or in front of Chinese people that they spoke to, we found the cultural affinity between Maori and Chinese is closer than that between Anglo-Saxon and Chinese. And that our New Zealand companies, therefore, should be embracing all those aspects of our indigenous Maori culture, because that affiliates so well with Chinese culture. I'll now go into risk land and start talking about some recommendations to government. Now, I'll preface this by saying that our relationship, the New Zealand business relationship with, particularly with the Foreign Affairs, and Graham is sitting dangerously close to me right now, so I'll be very careful what I say, and also with the Ministry of Primary Industries and New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, Pete's here as well, who support all of our businesses extremely well. Every single one of our New Zealand businesses in China has a strong understanding of how important it is that we foster really good relationships with our government, and they do a tremendous job for us. We also suggest that we need to clearly articulate New Zealand's independent foreign policy and support for international rules-based trade, which we heard about this morning from both the Prime Minister and also Ambassador Wong Xiaolong. Secondly, for the New Zealand government to support business and tourism by continuing to improve the visa requirements for Chinese business travellers to be competitive with other countries. Thirdly, that the New Zealand government is able to conduct and continues to conduct high-level ministerial level exchanges supporting economic development. Now, Minister Macleay's been up twice. We've had the visit from Lee Chiang down to New Zealand, and these are very, very important exchanges for us. And the Prime Minister's visit was a highlight, not only for New Zealand business, but also for the very high presence that he gave to New Zealand brands there. So I can't underestimate how appreciative that New Zealand companies are, that the New Zealand Prime Minister and also our Trade Minister have been up there frequently. The fourth recommendation we have there is that the New Zealand and Chinese government continue to fully implement the New Zealand-China FTA. So it began in 2008, originally cultivated by Helen Clark's government, nurtured and polished, if you like, by Sir John Key, and it's been updated again in 2022, and now there's further talks going on between our government, our FTA team, who we were pleased to host, and also the New Zealand Business Roundtable. It is a fundamental platform, as was said earlier by Richard Allen, of our dairy, of our beef, and all of our relationships with trade. So those are the recommendations. Thank you very much for this listening. Sorry to hold you up from lunch, and thank you for your time. Zhōngu hao.